Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we are going to do another standalone this week. Now, this book is by Whitney G, who we've done before with the Reasonable Doubt series. That was really good. So if you haven't listened to that one, go in the archives and listen to that review. But today's book is going to be called 2 Weeks Notice. We meet Tara Lauren, and she's talking to her mother via email, and she's telling her mom, I'm about to put in my 2 weeks notice. Her mother has always told her winners never quit and quitters never win, and that she should just stick this out. This is about character building. She's working over 100 hours a week. She has absolutely had it with her boss. Now, her mother is the complete opposite of her, and we find out that when Tara went to school, she wanted to pursue something other than business. And her mother was like, you do that, and I'm going to stop paying for your tuition. So they have a relationship, but clearly they've got issues. Tara then tells the reader she can't talk about the end without telling us the beginning. And so she starts from the beginning. So we meet Preston Parker. He is the CEO of the Rose Parker hotel chain. And for the past 10 years, he's been the top guy. When it comes to luxury hotels, he's it. Like, he is the standard. He's always in the press. He's always pictured with some type of supermodel. He's, of course, has a driver. His driver every morning gives him the daily papers so he can see the different headlines that are out about him. There's always a magazine asking the question, when is he going to settle down? Um, he has a merger that he's been trying to do, and it actually just went through. And he wound up firing everybody in the company. And initially, I think he wasn't supposed to do that, but he did. So everything with him, when he's pictured with the women, he knows that's going to get the press's attention, and he does that to kind of keep them away from knowing the negative stuff. It still comes out, but it doesn't make as much of a splash as the whole who he's dating type of thing. So he goes into work. The lead receptionist, her name's Cynthia, she's very forward with him. Like, she wants him, and she is just not bashful about it. She sent him a picture of herself in a bikini on vacation with just her bottoms on. And she's like, why didn't you respond to my text? And he said, why would I when I blocked you 3 weeks ago? And she's telling him, you need to date more regular women. I see you keep going after these supermodels. It's not working out. Like, she just throws herself at him every other day. He won't fire her because even though she does this, she is the absolute best at the job. So he keeps his distance from her the best he can. He told her, listen, just route my calls the way they're supposed to be. I'm expecting an important one. Make sure I get it. And he leaves and goes to his office. So he has an email from George, who is his in-house attorney. And George is like, get to my office now. He goes up. His current assistant is there. And he calls all of his assistants, male or female, Taylor. He does not even bother to learn their names. He just doesn't care. Poor guy is in tears. This guy's a Harvard graduate, but he cannot do the job. It's just too much. He's like, every night he's going home complaining to his girlfriend. He's scarred for life based on the text messages that he saw, and he just can't do it. So he had to do something with his contacts. I guess he had to go filter through the different ones. And there were so many from women saying, the most, they would say the most dirtiest things, like, I can't wait to have your cock again, and when are you going to put it back inside of me, and I can't wait for it to be in my mouth, which to me doesn't sound that horrible, okay? It doesn't. But for some reason, this guy, it freaks him out, and it's just too much. And he's like, your demands are just not reasonable. Like, I can't do it, you know? So he's like, this is his formal, I'm quitting, right? And Preston's basically like, he could care less. He's like, get your final check from HR and leave. Like, he really doesn't care. So the guy leaves, and George is like, he's got another Yale graduate that's been in the hotel business for like 10 years. This should be a good one. And he's like, nah, that's not going to work, because he kind of feels like when he did his first takeover, Preston didn't have a business degree just yet. So he kind of wants to find someone that's got that same kind of grit. So he's going to take a couple of weeks. He's going to try and find one. Now, if he can't, or if it doesn't work out with who he finds, then at that point, George is going to hire that Yale graduate. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this should be fun. Preston and George, they're doing interviews. This girl comes in. She says she was, worked in senior sales at Toys R Us and all this type of stuff. And she's doing kind of good, but something's off with her. And Preston notices that every time she answers a question, it's like she has to look down at her like hand. And he's like, who the hell has a cheat sheet for an interview, So then he asked her if she knew someone, I think who headed up sales. I think his name was like Tim Louse or something like that. And she at first was like, who? And he's like, Tim Louse. You had to have had some projects with him, sales projects, if, you were in upper sales. And she's like, oh, yeah, I worked with him all the time. But she couldn't give any details. When they were like, okay, can you talk to us about those projects? She couldn't tell anything. So she finally breaks, and we find out girl is a whole fraud. So she goes on interviews, and she normally uses a bankrupt company because she assumes they can't check references. So she can, say she has all this experience and no one can really verify it. But she never worked at Toys R Us. Um, this was her first time using Toys R Us as one of her companies. So she does this a lot. But I'm kind of like, is it working if you still going on different interviews? Like, it might not be working, baby, But she thinks, that she still would be good for her. She still thinks she's got a shot, right? We find out she's a barista at Starbucks. So they tell her, like, no, this is not happening. So then George is kind of like, well, why don't you give Cynthia a chance? And he says, I'll show you. He calls Cynthia in, and she's already hiked up her skirt a little bit, walking towards Preston because she didn't see George in there. And then when she saw him, she's like, oh, I thought you were asking me to come in here alone. And then she just throws herself at him again. And George sees this and he goes, oh, okay. I see why. So they were gonna offer her like an interim position for the executive assistant. If they don't find anyone out, then they'll go with her. She of course is like, well, I hope it doesn't work out, because she of course wants to work with him. So, but they're not going to do that with her because she's too much. So when she leaves, George is like, those were like outright obvious sexual advances towards you. Like, why don't you just fire her? And she said, and he says, because she's the best at what she does. She's the only one that doesn't break when I give her multiple things to do at once. I'm like, oh my gosh. So then Linda, one of the executives, comes in, and she's been going through losses. There's a $5,500 loss coming every month from a certain hotel. They don't know what's happening. They feel like it's got to be an inside job. He tells Linda he's going to find out. And if he finds out she's trying to cover for someone, she's going to be gone. So it's just a whole ass mess. And apparently it's happening in the mornings. Looks like 3 days a week. And he's wondering, like, okay, what exactly is happening? So he's prepared to like fire 8 people when he's going to show up at the hotel tomorrow, which he calls and tells them, I'll be there tomorrow. We switch to, it could be Tara or Tara. Maybe I should say Tara. We'll go with Tara. Okay. Tara Lauren. We find out that the glamorous life she thought she would have when she moved to New York City has not been the case. She's got a business degree, a law degree, and yet she lives in Brooklyn with a roommate in a studio apartment, and they are currently 7 days late on their rent. So she's been trying to get her first job. Nothing's working out. She's got a second interview today with the Russ Stock Exchange, and so she has got to find a way to get down to Manhattan. So she takes the train and then she gets on the Gray Line tour bus, which would help her get to closer to her destination in downtown Manhattan. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a new ticket. She only has this old one that she's been able to scam rides for a few months off of. But unfortunately today, they want to scan her ticket. And so the guy shames her, of course, calling her a bum, telling the people, here's one of the bums we have in the city. Just awful. I'm like, oh my gosh. So she gets off. She's got about 30 minutes before she has to be to the interview. She's starving and she decides to stop by the Rose Parker Hotel to indulge in a free breakfast. So she had said she wasn't going to do this anymore, but these gourmet breakfasts, they're on her way and her stomach's rumbling and she decides to stop. Well, of course, this is the time that her ass gets caught. So the security guard, wants her to show her room key or at least give her room number, something. And she just is trying to do the whole, how dare you ask me that? And it's not working. The security guy has seen her before and he knows she's scamming, you know? So she runs right into our boy Preston Parker. She doesn't know who he is. However, she is very much enthralled with these green eyes and black hair. And for some reason, she just wants to run her fingers through it. And she knows she's supposed to be running, but yet she's mesmerized by him. And her panties are wet at this point. And it doesn't help that condoms fell out of her purse. So what they do, since they're behind on their rent, is they have condoms that they sit on the windowsill so they can get in and out. They won't use the front door. So that's why she has them. I said, oh my gosh. The security guy is like, I can call the police right now. He rats her out. He's like, she's been coming in here 3 or 4 times a week. She always sneaks in. She uses the side door sometimes. I mean, he's just running down the line of what she's been doing. And so Preston tells her, come with me. And she thought he was like the manager of this place. And he had to tell her, no, I own this. He's like, follow me. So he takes her up to his office and he wants to know why she's been stealing. And first off, it's funny because when he asked for her name, she said Ashley Smith. He said, you want to tell me your real name or you want me to call the cops and then you could tell them your real name? So then she goes, it's Tara Lauren. Or Tara. Okay, you may hear me say Tara or Tara. It just depends on how it comes out. I'm just going to be honest with you. So she's honest with him. And she says, listen, I've been having a really hard time. I'm trying to get a job. She tells him about her degrees. And he's like impressed. Like, oh, really? And she's like, I've gone on a few interviews, but I'm still looking. And she goes, she doesn't have any experience, but she does make him think about himself, right? She does have an Ivy League type of degree, you know what I mean? She went to Ivy League schools, but it's there's that grit, right, of somebody trying to make it, trying to get their foot in the door, doing whatever they have to make that happen. And that appeals to him, you know? And she told him, I've marked on my calendar every day that I've done it so that I could send you a check for $15 a day once I started working. And she was going to send an apology note with a check. And we find, she's only got $14 in her bank account right now. I'm like, oh my gosh, poor girl. She is really out, down and out. She doesn't want to move back in with her mother back in I think it's Pittsburgh. Um, she wants to make it here. And so he tells her to burst a bubble, non-guest, it's $85 for the gourmet breakfast. She's like, well, I'm still just gonna make it 15 since I've been doing it for the past 3 months. So he tells her that no, she tells him that she was on her way to an interview. It was for the Russ Stock Exchange. It was for a executive assistant position, and he's looking for an EA, and so he offers her that job. And he's just like, go down to human resources if you want it. And she's like, don't you want to verify that I have the degrees that I have? And he's like, oh, they'll verify that in minutes. And she's a little stunned. But then when he tells her that the salary is $350,000 a year, oh, her mouth drops. And she, of course, is like, yeah, she's taking that job. She's headed to human resources. George comes in and he's talking about the interviews that he scheduled, and Preston's like, cancel them. Well, no, he says, I canceled those an hour ago. He's like, why? He's like, I already, hired my assistant. And George is like, without my input? And he's like, I went with my gut. So George says, what does she look like? And Preston's like, she's Ivy League, da 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 da. She speaks 3 different languages, which are actually the same languages he speaks. And he asks him again, what does she look like? He never answers. So he sent, like HR had sent a short list of her qualifications. So she's got a BA from Princeton University, an MBA from Princeton University, and a JD, which is that lawyer degree. Juris Doctor, I forget how you say it, from Harvard University. So she's also studied abroad, um, various places, speaks Spanish, French, and German. Um, she's impressive. And so George wants an answer about what she looks like, but he never answers. And so George is like, I'm just going to have Cynthia set up the interviews for about 3 weeks out because he doubts the woman's going to last that long. And also, I forgot to mention that HR, when they called and they were talking to Preston, they were like, hey, she requested to have like a $900 advance on her check so she could pay her rent. And he told them, approve 9,000. I'll make sure she pays it back. The HR woman also said, I think she might have taken my umbrella because he's watching her as she leaves out and she's got an umbrella. Yeah, I think the bitch kind of like to steal. I know it's a necessity. It still don't make it right, but okay, you going through some stuff, but you just doing stuff at this point. So our girl goes home. She's super happy. She's gonna walk through the front door. Her roommate Ava's there, and Ava's got a job doing stuff within fashion, different types of jobs. She's been stealing toilet paper from her job, and she's super excited because she's got the nice soft tissue now. And she also tells her, she's paid the rent. So they'll give them a key once they pay next month on time, because the landlord was like, well, since you all have been getting in and out through the window, you can keep on. I said, ooh, that is awful. So then he also asked them for some condoms, because remember, their condoms lined the windowsill. Hilarious. So the other thing is that she figured out the Wi-Fi password from the neighbors, which is like, these bitches need to get their own Wi-Fi, some funny mess. So then Tara tells her news, which is that she got this job. She tells her about the salary. They're excited. They're jumping around. They're going to celebrate. And then she tells her who she's going to be working for, and Ava changes. And she's like, I don't know if that's a good thing. So she whips out all of her magazines, and it has all these different horror stories from these different assistants that, you know, describe him as just being absolutely awful. He is extremely, beyond cocky. He's, I think, arrogant. He's just arrogant, And she's like, but it is a great salary, She's like, if I can keep the job, then, for a few months, that'll be great. And Ava's just kind of like, that's the thing, if you can keep the job. So then we fast forward 2 months. We find out a couple of things. Tara's got a boyfriend named Michael. Ava doesn't like him. She was kind of hoping when Tara said she had good news that it was that she was going to be dumping Michael. She gets a text from Michael, and he tells her, I hope you can make, this soiree that he's having at his job that evening. And she's like, she'll try. She's got a lot going on when it comes to work. So she hasn't really been able to spend a lot of time with him when she took this position. And she also sent him a text message asking, will you help me find a new apartment this weekend? He, of course, was like, absolutely. He's like, anytime you need to get away from your jerk boss, X, Y, and Z. So her roommate, of course, is like, oh my gosh, I'll be glad when we move. I don't have to hear you, every move you make, because they're in a small studio apartment. So guess what? Every time they move, you hear it, especially when she's got to get up at the crack of dawn. Because our boy Preston wakes up at 4:30 in the morning. Enough. So even though technically she doesn't have to be to the office until, like, I want to say 8 o'clock, she's got to do a slew of fucking errands before she gets in. So she basically has to be up around that same time. So yeah, that's hella early. So um the driver picks her up. The driver also calls her Taylor. It's a running joke. She doesn't get it. She's like, my name's Tara. Like, she's told him a ton of times. But she doesn't understand that that's the running joke. All assistants for him are called Taylor, because none of them normally make it. So Preston calls her. She almost didn't want to answer it, but she did. And he wanted his special coffee from Sweet Seasons. She gets off the phone, and the driver's like, are we going to Sweet Seasons? And she's like, no. It's like 5 blocks out of the way, and it's going to make her late. So she tells him, go to McDonald's. So she took a cup from Seasons. Again, I think she got a little problem with theft. I'm just being honest. She goes to McDonald's, gives them the cup, say, can you put caramel in this and make it a caramel coffee, right? So she makes it in time to the office with like 5 minutes to spare, gets everything set up on his desk the way he likes it. People are screaming, he's on his way, the boss is on his way. So, he's a real tyrant around there. So she goes into her office, and he calls her and tells her, can you come in my office, please? Which is not normal. Normally, he just demands. He doesn't ask. So she goes in his office, and he says, I thought that based on how we started, that basically I wouldn't have to worry about that issue anymore. I thought it was, basically your issue with theft, that was out of necessity. So, your lying and stuff like that, that was done with, right? So apparently with the Sweet Seasons coffee, they put a chocolate morsel at the bottom of it. So you don't see it until you get to the bottom. So he's known for weeks that she hasn't been going there. But I'm kind of like, but if you couldn't tell the taste, you shouldn't be able to tell it by the fucking taste, It should taste very different. And it made me laugh considering the last book we did, how the issue with coffee popped up. I thought that was cute. But anyway, I digress. So then he tells her about the fact that emails are monitored. Did she not realize that? And the girl's been putting in for other jobs, other applications and stuff. Because she's like, she's going to do 6 months and then she's done. So he's like, that's what she thought he was going to be talking about. But oh no, it wasn't that. It was that Michael, her boyfriend, works at the Marriott. And they see that there's been emails between the two of them. And there have been some explicit ones, okay? So first of all, she let him know, like, that's my boyfriend. There's no espionage going on. And he tells her you might want to tell him to tone down on sending you the explicit, shit. And not pictures, just the words. But he tells him, like he needs to work on it because he pretty much sucks at it. He tells her if he's going to send you something, he needs to tell you that if he wants to take your stress away, he's going to let you sit on his face for an hour while he eats your pussy. Like, he just goes in this graphic detail, and that girl gets soaking wet. And the conundrum is this: she despises him, but yet when he says certain things, it turns her completely on. She was hoping she was going to be able to make her boyfriend little drinks event or whatever, but she had to text him to tell him it was a no-go. She couldn't get out of there. The stylist has been bringing the items for weeks at 7 p.m. He's supposed to come in the morning, but it's like no matter how many times she talks to her, it never changes. So he wanted a short list for the evening. She got that. Cynthia comes in her office and basically tells her, you stole my job. I was the one that was supposed to have it. You've lasted longer than what we thought, but you're not going to make it longer than 3 months. There's a betting pool against you. Our boy Preston comes in and he's like, why wasn't my short list on my desk and my coffee on my desk? And she's like, it was 30 minutes ago when I put it there. And Cynthia goes, well, when I dropped off your things, I didn't see anything. And of course, I'm like, she did it. That shouldn't even be a question. That shouldn't even be a question. Like, you already know on Preston's part, that the girl wanted that job. So you already know that. She'd do anything. She blatantly to your face tell you how bad she wants to fuck you. So why wouldn't she try and sabotage your assistant who has lasted a hell of a lot longer than your other ones? You know what I'm saying? Like, that was just fucking, to me, that was just kind of like, duh. And the fact that he, like, got pissy with Tara is what pissed me off. Because it was like, you saw she was being sabotaged. So that shit needs to stop. She did the list again, got him his coffee, got that done. Before she went down to meet the stylist, she looked over her contract and wanted to make sure she read something correctly. She was over all the auxiliaries. And so that means she could hire and she could fire them, and she didn't have to get permission from Preston. Now, this isn't every position, but there's just certain ones, and the stylist is one of those positions. And so she calls George to verify, hey, is this right? And George is like, yep, no, that's right. You can. So she goes downstairs, and she realized, she put two and two together. Cynthia and the stylist are always talking, so they're friends. So clearly they're trying to sabotage her as well, right? Everyone's probably in on this damn pool. Even if the girl isn't on the pool, she very well, might just be helping her friend get rid of this woman who's in the way of her getting the billionaire, right? So she goes downstairs and she lets that woman know, it's like this. You're going to bring these in the morning, And you're going to bring more of a selection than this Tom Ford. Because I know you're getting kickbacks, and that's why you're always pushing the Tom Ford. But I want more options. And if you do this again, if you come here late again, if you're 1 minute late, you're fired. And the girl was like, oh my gosh, like terrified. But it's like, you shouldn't be playing those type of fucking games. You shouldn't be doing it. It's crazy how people with the smallest amount of power can do the most fucked up shit. You know what I mean? The most absolute fucked up shit. And you are willing to try and sabotage this girl's job. You don't know this girl from Adam, you know? But you want to sabotage her job because your friend wants this guy and you feel like this woman's standing in your way, even though she's just the assistant. So I don't feel bad for her. She should have had the fear God had put in her because her stupid ass shouldn't have been fucking doing that. She shouldn't have been doing it. Period. And that was my little rant. So the heifer, of course, is like, you know, she won't be doing that anymore. She was sorry. Um, Tara did want to know, what did you bet? Like, what did you put? I mean, hell, if you bold enough to bet against me, at least tell me what it is. 3 months top. Same as Cynthia's. We switch back to Preston, and he is amazed by Tara. Okay, she's like 10 steps ahead of him. She's the absolute best that he's ever had. The problem is he can't stop visualizing bending her over his desk and fucking her. So then George comes in and tells him how wonderful Tara is, and hopefully we'll have good luck, the next time we get someone. And he's kind of like, whoa, 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 what are you talking about the next time? He's like, well, I just got a phone call from some green something company calling, asking for a reference for her. And he's like, why would they be doing that? And George knew. Well, she's been applying for jobs. Preston had no idea. He's furious. He now wants to implement the clause that's always been in their contracts, which is the non-complete clause. And so George is like, we've never enforced that before. He's like, but we are now. He's like, we're going to start doing a lot of other things too. So he told George, what did he tell him? I guess they're trying to acquire this hotel chain, the Von Stroms, and it's been kind of difficult to acquire them. They're more budget friendly, and they don't want to become super luxury, which is what the Rose Parker brand is. They don't want to become that. So it's been a back and forth thing with them. Um, he tries to give her a bunch of tasks to keep her stuck at the office. That shit doesn't work. Again, she's always like 10 steps ahead. So, because of that, she was able to leave. And he, of course, is pissed off because he knows she's trying to leave. So, some time passes and she gets to work. Cynthia is not in her chair. Okay? Michael is sitting there and he is pissed. He tells her this has gone too far. He's like, we haven't fucked in I don't know how long. I can't spend any time with you. The moment we spend a little time together, your fucking boss calls or someone from this company calls and you go running. She tries to dispute it, but it's the truth. She runs. And while he's saying this, she gets a phone call. She answers the call. She handles the situations. They start talking again, and he basically tells her, you should have saved up enough money to where you should be able to quit and give yourself some time to where you hear from another job. And I didn't like that because, first of all, bitch, fuck you. You don't pay my bills. So who the fuck are you to tell me how much money I should have to where I should be satisfied? This girl has been down to $14 in her goddamn account. And she never wants to be anywhere near that again. And so, what happens if she quits this job and she gets a bad reference and now she can't get another one? The money she has isn't going to last forever. It's just not going to do it. And so, again, I understand he maybe wants to spend some time or want to fuck or whatever, but she has a career. You're trying to fuck that up for her for your own selfish needs, you know? Like, then he did the whole ultimatum and told her, you know, if you, it's either me or the job. She gets a phone call from Preston. She goes in the office, she handles it, and when she comes back, he's gone. She was angry and sad, but at the same time, a relief came over her. Because guess what? That takes a toll on you. If you're working a lot, you have this demanding job, and then you have someone else trying to pull your time. That is very stressful. So, you know what? I am glad that he is gone. She did keep trying to text message him. He would not respond. He had changed his profile on Facebook saying he was in a relationship, I guess, with someone else. So that's what I mean. Like, he's trash anyway. Bitch, you didn't just get in another relationship in a day. You've already been doing stuff. And it's like she would have quit her job for what? For fucking what? You know? So he was trash, and he didn't have great, sex talk anyway. So it's like you're just a waste. So it's the end of the day. She does not want to go to this meeting that she's supposed to go to, and she decides, I'm going to have drinks with Ava. She's getting drunk. So she goes to the elevator, and our boy Preston is there. There's another colleague in there, and Preston, of course, is like, what are you doing? There's a meeting on the, whatever floor it was. And she says, I'm not going. I'll just have someone record it for me. He's like, no, that's not how this is going to work. She's like, well, I'm not going. So whoever it was, the other colleague got the hell off of the elevator and was like, oh, I think I forgot something. And they got the hell off. So he's like, you shouldn't talk to me like that in front of in front of people. And she's like, maybe you need to watch how you talk to me. And he was floored that she was doing this. And he says to her, I haven't seen any more emails from your boyfriend. And she says, that's because he dumped me because my life revolves around you, apparently. And he says he's sorry, but he really wasn't. He's being funny. Then all of a sudden he crashes against her mouth, and she is just drowning into him. And he yanked up her skirt, tore off her panties because she had on lace panties, fingered her while he kissed her, and they had to stop because because he had stopped the elevator before, but then when he was like fingering her, she was like up against the buttons, and so it started up again. And so they had to like get themselves together and separate. And he said to her, like I said, the meeting's mandatory. I was like, oh my gosh. And I also forgot to mention that he would call her late at night with like stupid shit to go over, making her go over emails and stuff, like different stuff. And she, again, remember I said before, when he says certain things, it turns her on. And so girl gets out her vibrator and makes herself come. And I said, I'm done. I'm done. I am absolutely done. We switch back to Preston. He's having a hard time functioning. He's like, he's got to get control of this urge with her, but at the same time, he needs to fully experience her. And so when Tara comes in, she gives him a rundown of things, and she ends it with telling him, what happened yesterday can't happen again. We got to stay professional. He was like, he said something about her moans because the girl was moaning. She says, my moans were fake because I was thinking about someone else, just lying through her teeth, and he knew it. And she was like, I want to keep it professional from here on out. And he was like, so you weren't turned on by my fingers being deep in your pussy? And she's like, no, I wasn't. And she's like, is there anything else I can help you with? And he said, oh, there's plenty of things you can help me with. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So then we switch back to Tara, and she's out having drinks with Ava, and she's frustrated. She's like, I haven't fucked anyone in so long, and I don't have time. And Ava tells her, oh yes, there's a way. Tinder will work for you. It's perfect. You can be out doing your boss's errands, get your little something, come back to the office, you'll be great. So she does admit to Ava that the problem is that she does want to fuck her boss, but that can't happen. So she downloads Tinder, and not too long after, she has this guy from Wall Street. He was an intern. They're having drinks, and she took him back to her place, which was closer than his. She had told him about her boss and stuff like that, and she had even gotten email messages and some phone calls from Preston while she was on this, I guess kind of date or having drinks with the guy, but she wouldn't answer. And so when she takes him to her apartment, Preston's ass is there. And the guy's like, I don't do ex-boyfriend shit. Like, I thought you said you were single. And Preston says, oh, she is single, very much so. I'm her boss. And he goes, I'm quite sure she saw where I was messaging her, and all this type of stuff. So he told the guy there was a work emergency. The guy went to try and kiss her cheek. Preston moved her away. The dude tried her other cheek, moved her away again. He's like, well, I'll just talk to you later. And he left. So she's like, what is the emergency? And Preston goes, you were going to fuck him, weren't you? And she's like, things I do on my personal time has nothing to do with you. And he goes, well, maybe I should get somebody else to be my emergency contact. You're not responding, and I don't like being ignored. She's like, I don't care. I'm on my own time. So then he tells her what the emergency is, which is he needs to know what cufflinks, if they're going to be shiny enough for the GQ cover shoot. And she about explodes. She's like, are you fucking kidding me? And he winds up telling her to have his coffee ready tomorrow morning, and he wants her on all fours. And she goes, what did you just say to me? And he says, you heard me. We fast forward 2 years later. We find out that over this period of time, she's missed weddings, bridal showers, graduations, being someone's godmother. She's had to cancel so much because of the schedule with her boss, and it's always conflicting with everything. She sent an email to her mom calling him an asshole, but mistakenly sent it to him. He replies back, I assume you thought this was for your mother. And she says, yes. She's in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and they're down there for a business trip, but she didn't want to go. He demanded she go, and so she decides she's going to be late for everything. So he winds up ordering her food. He knows what she likes. And then she comes in. Everyone stares at her. She's a beautiful woman, but she's giving him the silent treatment. And so she won't say anything to him. And so he sends her an email, and it's just a mess. And finally, she starts to talk to him about the schedule. And the next couple of months, he's got this really big gala. And she's like, do I need to get you a +1? He's like, you don't need to do that. You could just come with me. She's like, I've already told you that's not appropriate. I work for you. She's like, fine, we'll just make it for just one. You'll go by yourself. So he's apparently supposed to be doing some type of documentary, but she says, what are you going to talk about? You never open up. She's like, you still won't tell me anything about your twin. You have your brother. You never talk about your parents. He goes, I don't have a family. And she's like, exactly. So what are you going to talk about? So then they go over the presentation and stuff after she eats. What was cute is that the waiter had originally come over, gotten the order before she got there, right? He had told them exactly what it was. And when she came, she was like, whatever he told you, scratch it. I'm pretty particular. And she gives the exact same order that Preston had given the waiter. The waiter didn't say anything. He just kind of looked. He's like, okay, no problem. But yeah, he clearly knows her. But he should. If you're around someone that much, you should know him. If you don't, there's a problem. He tells her about how he has been hearing her at night. Like he walks past her room and he heard her on the phone. And he's like trying to find out if she's got like basically a new boo. And she's like, no, I'm talking to my mom. She's in Japan trying to find herself on some retreat. And apparently she's supposed to talk about her dreams and hopes and shit. And I get roped into these 2-hour phone calls. But I'm like, again, why the fuck you walking past my place at night? You know what I mean? Um, I forgot to mention, she's also made a lot of changes in the office over these 2 years. Um, because she's over those auxiliaries, she's been able to. So she's been able to make a lot of changes that have made the place a lot more efficient. The receptionists, they're no longer on their floor, they're on the floor below. You have to make an appointment to see him. You can't just walk in his office. Like she's implemented a lot of stuff to make everything flow a lot better, and he has been very thankful for it. Unfortunately, Miss Cynthia still sends him emails saying how much she misses him and that she sent another pic and he needs to unblock her and all this type of stuff. I say at some point it's just stalking. You know, at some point it is. Or no, I'm not gonna. Well, we'll just say harassment. We'll just say harassment. I'm not gonna say stalking, but she seems like she might find out where he's staying. She might, go by too. But he's kind of stalkerish himself. The way he's walking past Tara's rooms at night. Okay, but we'll just go with harassing for little girl Cynthia. So they're on their way from Mexico. They were there for about 2 weeks. She looks at her passport. She's been everywhere, all over the globe, but it feels like a blur. And she's getting tired of not having a life. Her money's great. He's now doubled her salary. So she's now making 700,000 a year. Her bonuses are insane, but she's tired. And she's looking forward to getting back to New York. So she messages um, Ava and lets her know she pretty much wants a venting session when she gets back. And then when they get to New York, he pops up and says, we got to go to Paris right now. And she's going like, what? He's like, well, there's some issue with a head person and they got to get there now. And they're going to be there at least a week. And she's like, can I at least just go get clothes? He's like, no, just take my black card. He's put her name on his black card as an authorized user. He's like, buy whatever you want. And I'm like, geez. But again, here's the thing. She can buy what she wants. You know? It's something else that she's missing. So this sounds great, but it's like, gosh, when you thought you were going to have an opportunity to breathe to yourself and that's taken away from you. It's a lot. And so she realizes she's got to make a change and he gets a call, but she's decided she's going to be quitting. She's drawn up a few drafts of her 2 week notice. She finally gets it done, goes in that on Monday, gives it to him. She gets back to her desk. She looks at her office. She's got a jacuzzi in there, a place where she's supposed to be able to take a nap as well. Large flat screens, but she's never been able to enjoy it. And so she gets an email from him saying, I don't accept it. Like, this is not happening. You need to read your contract. So he sent her the PDFs. She looks through the contract. She doesn't see anything that says she can't quit. And he's like, you need to read closer. So she brings him the contract and he pulls out a gray marker. And right above her signature, he runs the gray marker across and there's white letters that appear. That the employment was indefinite and she can't quit until there's some other stuff in there. So I'm like, this is fucked up. And I don't see how that can be upheld because you couldn't see it. Not you didn't understand. You couldn't see it. So you had me agree to something that I couldn't see. I had no idea that was even there. So I don't even see how that's fucking legal. Okay? But he's on this trip about you went to school for law. You should know it's, da 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 da. But I just don't feel like that should be legal. So the contract says that she has to work at least 7 years. Any bonuses she accepts adds on additional time. she's accepted like 20 bonuses. The first 120 days of her employment was the only time frame that she could have went to human resources and quit. After that, pure contract. And so Ava says to her, maybe we can fake your death, or something. And she's like, yeah, I can maybe be on the run for a while. And then Ava's like, no, you can't. And then Ava says, outside of him firing you, I don't see what you can do. And she said, wait a minute, what did you just say? We switch to Preston's POV, and of course, he's preoccupied with thoughts about this damn notice. He's in there with George and asked George if he was, and I'm sorry, he asked George if George thought he was soulless. And so George is like, do you need another psychological evaluation? So we find out that with everything that he was giving Tara, like through the years, like the bonuses and the stock options and stuff, he thought something was wrong with him. So he had him psychologically evaluated. So George is like, is there time for another one? I can get someone in here tonight. Like, what is going on? And he says, I will say this. You are very evasive. You don't have any friends. You claim you don't have any family. No one really knows you. Now, this makes you a wonderful businessman, but basically a shitty person. So George is like, I'm going to go get me an energy drink, and by the time I come back, I expect you to be the ruthless CEO again. So then Tara comes in smiling, bringing him lunch with like green mashed potatoes. It's a whole mess. She's found a way she's going to try and get fired. And she's given all of the interns off for 2 weeks. She gave, I want to say the receptionist too. And so when he tried to get someone to bring him another meal, couldn't do it because she sent everyone home. And then she also gave his cufflinks and some Audemars Piguet watch. What is it? Audemars Piguet watches. Gave those to a pawn shop to clean, and was like, they'll give you like a $20 voucher if they lose it. And he's going, okay, game on. Next day she sleeps in. She woke up around 9 in the morning, turned her alarm off, and set it for 12 p.m. Went back to sleep. Uh, she had about 300 missed emails at the time of her going back to sleep the first time. She has some text messages, all kind of stuff. She decides, I'm gonna take a walk in Central Park. So around 3, 4ish in the afternoon, her driver, she calls him to come and take her in. She's got on sweats, tank top. There's a marketing meeting that was supposed to be happening. It's really important, and of course she's trying to miss it. So she comes in, everyone's looking at her, and everyone's looking at her like she's plumb crazy. And she stopped to get her some Sweet Seasons coffee, but only for herself. And he's like, good, we can start the meeting now. He called down, had someone bring up some clothes for her to wear. He pretty much figured she was going to pull this type of stunt, and so he was ready for it. But what he also told her was, either you stay for this meeting, or everyone that is on this floor and the one above it are going to have to stay here until it's done. I was like, shoot. Now that got her to do what he wanted because, she doesn't want to have anyone else suffer because of her. I mean, it's cruel, but it's smart. Next day, she comes in. She's late again. Um, she's ignoring his calls. He comes into her office. She's like, what do you want, Preston? He's like, oh, I'm not Mr. Parker anymore. She says, no, you're Preston. He's like, no one else calls me that. She's like, but I'm going to call you that. And so he told her to go get his coffee, as well as his updated report. She pulls out the Keurig she never used, put a Hershey's chocolate chip at the bottom, got a Colombian pod, and said, have at it. And then she said she stopped working on this marketing plan. It was only like 10% done. And then later she comes in bringing him the full presentation because she fully did it. He says, "Oh, I don't need it." And she's like, "Don't tell me you hacked into my computer." He says, "I was going to do it, but I didn't have to since your password was fucking hate my boss or something like that." And he tells her she doesn't have to worry about the coffee anymore because he reached out to Sweet Seasons. And what I forgot to mention, every time she goes to buy coffee for herself or him, she buys out the place. Everyone, she buys them coffees on top of some extra stuff. So he's been spending like six, hundreds of thousands on coffee for the past couple years. So he got them a licensing deal, and they're gonna set up shop in this actual building. So now he says, when I want coffee, you can just go and get it. And no, it must have been something about, it was something with fucking my boss or something like that. And he also told her when it came to the password, if you want me to do that, I can bend you over right now and do it. And this is where I'm like, why the fuck you ain't saying bitch sexual harassment? I'm like, there's got to be something with the fuck shit that he's saying and the stuff that's happened that should void this contract. Like, there's got to be. She's getting ready for a presentation. But it's a mock presentation for the real thing. And every person in the building as she's walking through is so happy that Sweet Seasons is in the building. They're operating out of the basement now. And every cup says courtesy of T. Lauren. He told everyone it was her idea and all this type of stuff. And she figured no point in correcting people. So she doesn't want to do this mock presentation, but she goes. And of course, he stops her multiple times, just being slick out the mouth. So when she says, she was, happy, something like happy to be working for this company, like this little thing, this little spiel in the beginning. He goes, "Are you really?" Like, he kept just being an asshole. And he made a comment about hiring an actress. And she said, "And maybe we could get one for you too, who will shut the fuck up and won't interrupt." Everyone got quiet. He told everyone to get out except for Miss Lauren. Everybody got the hell out of that conference room. He closed, locked the door, and he's like, "Everything I've done for you, and you still act like I'm the worst thing in the world." And then he crashed her lips, started kissing her. She grabbed his head. Then he started eating her pussy. He made her come, and then he started eating her pussy again. Someone came knocking on the door. He had to go, and he told her not to leave. "I'll be back to finish this." And the person at the door was like, "Someone's calling for you. It's an emergency." He leaves. She gets an email an hour later saying that an emergency came up and she's going to have to do the presentation without him. And they'll finish whatever it was at like a later time, basically. And she, of course, is like, "What the hell? Like, what's the emergency? Like, what actually happened?" We switched to Preston and we found out what kind of happened. So when he went to his office, the Van Stroms were there. Now, these are the ones he's been negotiating with, and they were actually supposed to have the meeting the following week in London. So the husband and wife are in there, and they're basically telling him they're not sold on the idea yet. They're not sure they want to sell to him. And he's like, "You could have called for this, you know." The wife was very much like, "You're heartless, and if we cut you open right now, we'll just see a wallet." And his smart ass says, "Would it be Armani or Gucci?" Said, "I'm done." So they leave, and then George comes in, and he tells George, like, "You could have handled that. Like, why did I need to do it?" And he's like, "Well, I figured, if they came here all the way in person, they wanted to speak to you." He said, "But that's not the emergency. It's I don't know if it was line 1 or 2. So he takes the call and finds out that his twin brother, Weston Parker, and his fiance were on a bridge that was a major accident happened and they both died. He's stunned. His parents died apparently not too long after they graduated, and so they were like never really close. And they've always been very different. And at first they would kind of call on their birthday, and then the different holidays, and then slowly it stopped. And so for the past 10 years they've had absolutely no contact. And so he got word he's got to go meet someone at a bar about his brother's estate. So he goes down, and that's when he shoots her that email about, emergency coming up. So he goes down, he's talking to this guy. The guy hands him a keychain. It's got the word Violet written on it. He's thinking like, oh, my brother's trying to fuck me over one last time or something, right? Um, but that's not what it was. And his brother actually called him an asshole in his will, but he has the same thing written about his brother too. He's like, he's leaving him Violet, and he's just kind of like, leaving me Violet? Like, what the hell? And so he didn't even know his brother had a fiance, you know? So we find out Violet is his brother's daughter. She's 3 years old. And they bring her in. She knows who he is because because they ask her, do you know who this man is? And she says, yeah, that's my Uncle Preston. Daddy told me about him. He's my daddy's twin. And he's floored because he didn't know she existed, right? And so the person's telling him, they haven't told her about the parents. They figured a family member would need to tell him. She's asking, where's daddy and mommy? She's like, mommy said I could have ice cream if I was good today. So this is just a whole lot. The poor baby. And he's stunned. He doesn't know what to do. He's like, what about Child Protective Services? He's like, you're next to kin. And there's not going to be a funeral. The brother didn't want that. He just wanted to be cremated. That's it. And they'll get in touch with him in regards to the other dealings, because his brother is the owner of the W hotels. And that, of course, is going to go to his daughter, but, you know, somebody's got to run that shit before then, too. So he had thought his brother had been in California this whole time. His brother's been in New York for, looks like, a few years. And it's just crashing on him. Like, whoa. And she's hungry. She's like, can we have pizza? And she's like, I got a pee-pee. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Tara goes on the trip. She comes back. On her way back, she sends him an email basically begging to let her out of the contract. She knows she didn't read the fine print, but she's like, please, can we just discuss this? And he sends back a response, and he says, if you can help me with an emergent situation that came up, I will let you out of the contract within 6 weeks. Of course, she's like, okay, as soon as they land, go to his penthouse. He lets her in, tells her, recently he found someone that he has, strange, attachment feelings for, and it's going to be a permanent situation. He's going to need her help. And she, of course, feels this pang of jealousy, and she blurts out, I am not planning your wedding. I'm not planning your engagement party. And if you think I'm not going to tell whoever you're with that you had your mouth on me a few days ago. And he's like, no, 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 no. I have a niece. And she's like, oh. He says, my brother died. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And he's like, she says, I didn't know you had a niece. He said, I didn't either. And he says, he left her to my care. And he's had all these books he's trying to read about parenting and stuff. And so then the little girl comes in, eating a lollipop, asking can she have another one. He gave it to her. And then she's like, how many have you given her? He says, I don't know, like maybe 20. And she's like, oh, no. And so she goes and looks in the fridge. He ain't got no food. It's just... it's a mess. She's like, well, you can start by making one of the guest bedrooms her room, And then little Violet goes, I don't feel so good. And she throws up twice. Poor Preston. So they got her a car seat because he didn't even have that. And we find out he's basically been feeding her pizza and lollipops and then anything else she asked for these past few days. So I'm like, no wonder the girl's stomach was so fucked up. So she, of course, Tara's telling him, like, you can't do that, you know? So she's like, you need to make that bedroom in your office a place for her to be until you're able to find, like, a nanny and stuff. And she's like, I'll find some recommendations and start interviews and stuff like that. And he's like, I'm sorry. And she's like, I'll get a designer so they can start, you know, getting her room put together. And so then he asked her if she would go with him to the gala and help with, you know, if she helps with, you know, getting a replacement, he really will let her go in 6 weeks. There's no underlying bullshit. They shake on it. And he actually told her thank you. And it shocked the shit out of her because he's never said that. And then, of course, she was like, well, you're welcome. They go to the gala. She looks divine. He doesn't pay her any compliments. The only thing he does is every time he introduces her to someone, he says, this is Tara Lauren, my assistant who's quitting. So he just embarrassed her. She had had enough. She had messaged Ava. Ava's like, you shouldn't have to take that and just leave, you know. So she storms out. He follows her. He's like, where are you going? She's like, I'm not staying here for this crap, you know. Before she stormed off, and he was making that comment to the CEO of Marriott. I think his name was Mark. And he, of course, was like, happy to meet her. He was like, I'd heard a lot of great things about you and all this type of stuff. So she left and he followed her, old Preston, to the bathroom. And he's like, do you really hate me? Do you really hate me? And then he kissed her. She kissed him right back. So the woman that was in the bathroom, she ran out. That was it. Um, and then he locked the door, of course. And then he told her to turn around. And he said, I want you to watch me fuck you. And so that's exactly what he did, which is a very hot thing, by the way. And so she's screaming and hollering. And when they walk out, tons of people are there. There's even some press. And they're trying to find out who she is and all this type of stuff. They get in the car. He's like, he told the driver to my house. He told him to pull up the partition. The driver did so and then turned the music up. He whipped out a condom and he told her, I want you to ride my cock all the way home. And before he could put the condom on, she sucked him off, took him all the way down her throat, swallowed every drop as he came in her mouth. And they get on the elevator, they kiss again. And when they walk in, the nanny's like, I quit. The woman gave her check back. She says, I'm not cashing it. That is a hellion. She's like, it was a check, I guess, for the following week. She says, I'm not doing it. She's a hellion. I can't do it. Little girl over in the corner with her headphones on. And when she left, Violet says, I don't like her. So then it was time for bed. And she, of course, Violet was like, Bear wants some apple juice, aka she wants some apple juice. She had that, and then she asked about her parents, and so they figured this is the time he needs to go ahead and tell her. So his brother Weston, we find out, had already told her about their parents. And so she, the little girl, Violet, was like, are they in the clouds? Like, Grandpa and Grandma? And he says, yes, they're not coming back. And she's like, they're not coming back, are they? And he says, no, I'm so sorry, they're not. And so she asked him to read this story she likes a couple of times, and then she passed out. And then Tara was about to do the whole, that can't happen again. And Preston was like, it's going to happen again because we want it to happen again, you know? And so they were starting to play around, but then the baby woke up, and she asked to sleep with him along with her bear. And he's like, that's fine. So then they knew they couldn't play around, so she told him, have Cynthia watch her because she has a degree in child development. And she's also got a new boyfriend, so I guess she won't try and fuck him anymore. So he's like, okay, we'll try it. Cynthia's watching the kid. She was actually really shocked that Tara had even recommended her. And she was like, I thought she hated me, And he's like, why would she hate you? She shut up because she didn't want to tell him about the bullshit she had pulled. The new intern came in. She's shaking. He's like, why are you shaking? She said, because I heard you were Satan on earth. I said, I'm done. And she said, I heard you would unleash hell on everyone. And she confessed she had dropped his pepper bagel. She's like, it was only for 5 seconds, and I wiped it off with my shirt. And so then she left. Tara came in, threw the bagel in the garbage, and gave him a plain one, which is what he should have had from the beginning anyway. And then she went over his schedule and she told him she had written the recommendation letter. All he had to do was sign it. He's like, I don't remember agreeing to that. She said, you promise I'll expect it within an hour. He's like, then I'll have it to you within two, just because, he has to be difficult. Um, what did he say? He said something about her lips and stuff, and she's like, no, we can't do that in this office. And he's like, it's soundproof. You made sure it was reinforced. But she had only done that because she was tired of him yelling out her name. So he's doing interviews. The woman is telling him in the interview how he needs to do things the Hilton way. And he messages Tara and is like, get this woman out of my office, you know. And he's like, if they don't have the qualifications like you do, I don't even want the interview, right? And so she comes in, interrupts the interview, gets the woman out of there, um, saying, he had an emergency, and then he put something on the schedule. He had done this TLM. She's thinking it's like something with marketing, and he put that in there. It stands for Tara Lauren's mouth. So they've been fucking good. So she's hoping that when she leaves, maybe they can pursue something. Because she is seeing another side of him, this nicer side, especially when it comes to the child, Violet. And he, of course, keeps begging her to stay. He's like, I'll give you more stock options, more benefits. She's like, you already gave me too much. Like, I have more stock options and benefits than anybody. And he's like, not even for another year. She's like, nope, I can't do it. So then they kiss and have their fun. So Preston wakes up in the middle of the night. He's having an anxiety attack. They've been worse since his brother died. He tries to do some work, doesn't really want to do it. He calls Tara. She answers, and she's like, she knew he was thinking about his brother. And she asked him, if you don't mind me asking, how did your parents die? And if we find out they were taken out during a robbery, and the safe didn't even have anything in it. It was empty. And the police officers were just kind of like, hell, these things happen. Blase blase about it. He hardened up. Weston was more so he allows himself to feel. He wants to process those feelings. Whereas Preston felt like, why do I need to process them? They're gone. They're not coming back. And they've always been at odds, but it just grew more and more after the parents died. And so then he had asked her what she was doing and she didn't answer. And he's like, what are you doing? She finally admits she has a vibrator. She was masturbating. And then, of course, he wants to know, well, what was she thinking of, right? So she does tell him the truth. She's like, I was thinking about, us fucking in the office. But he wanted more elaborate. So he, of course, starts giving her a more elaborate story. And he starts hearing that buzzing sound of the vibrator. So they have great phone sex. And then afterwards, he tells her she can take off the next couple of days. She's got a big trip coming up to London. And so he's like, take the time off. And so he hangs up, and he kind of wish he had stayed on the phone with her. She texted him and was like, are you still going to start your day at 4:30 in the morning? He's like, yeah. So she kind of just like do you mind if I message you or whatever? And he's like, of course. He was cool with that. Violet woke up, lay next to him on the couch, her and Bear. So our girl Tara is on her way back from her trip. She's Skyping with Ava, her best friend. Ava's in Paris dealing with Fashion Week, and she tells Ava, what her ass has been up to and all this type of stuff. And she told her about all the sex they've been having. Her friend is happy for her, but of course at the same time she's like, don't get attached to that little girl. But she had already purchased the little girl shirts and things with teddy bears and clothes for the teddy bear from Scotland. So she gets off the phone, tells the attendant what she wants, uh, gluten-free meals, and the attendant's kind of looking at her weird, like we don't have that. And she's thinking like, why don't we have those options? So the driver tells her, he's like, I'm so sorry. Normally I get that for you, and I'd have it already, but I forgot to pick it up. She's like, what are you talking about? So we find out that the place that he gets the stuff from, Preston has it flown in from the West Coast. So she'll have these options on the plane. And so the driver starts to tell her all the ways that he has been making her life easier, as bearable, shall we say, as possible. He sent an email out to all of the staff telling them what to do, so that because her job is so stressful, this is to help alleviate anything. So he's been doing a lot of stuff over the years. I'm like, okay, now that's why he kept saying all the things I do for you, because they were things that he was doing in the background and she had no idea. Which, again, how can I thank you for something I don't know you fucking doing it? You know what I mean? But she's baffled because that's not what she had, expected. So Preston answers some emails with Tara, and then George comes in the office and he sees Violet, and he kind of was like talking about the different interviews that he was setting up, and he's like, what is that? And he goes, it's a child. And George is like, oh my gosh, if you've gotten yourself involved in some kind of paternity lawsuit, let me tell you right now, you're gonna lose because she looks like you. And so Preston says, she's my niece. He goes, oh, okay. And he told him what happened with the brother. I would have thought he would have known about that. I guess maybe he wouldn't, but maybe he's just in counsel for the job, and maybe he's not his personal lawyer. I don't know, but I would have thought he would have known. I was a little shocked that he didn't. But once he said that, he got down on the floor and was playing with Violet, and he's like, I can reschedule those meetings. He's like, family is more important. It's about time you learned that lesson. So Tara did an interview with a woman that used to work for Borders, and she said this was her second interview. We find out it's that same damn girl, the one that said she worked for Toys R Us. Only this time she's looking at her arm, and she of course was like, "Oh no, this is not gonna happen," because the girl wasn't doing good in the interview. But I thought it was funny that the woman tried again with another out of business company. That's wild. Cause she even said it. That's what was so crazy. She's like, I knew it would work better this time. It was like, girl, bye. So she goes, she leaves. Tara checks her emails and she sees these letters of regrets that the two companies have sent her. And she's going, I didn't send any letters of regret that I couldn't take any jobs. So she immediately knows it was Preston's ass. So she goes storming in his office, but he's laying down with Violet. Cynthia comes in and lets her, she had a longer lunch and she was thankful for that to Preston. And he told Cynthia, don't interrupt me, you know, for the next whatever, unless it's an emergency. So him and her already holding hands in front of people, like it's not a secret, it's just they're doing them. So he starts kissing her and she just kind of was like, nope, stop. Why did you send those letters of regret? And he said, she's like, did you hack into my emails again? And he's like, well, your password is sex with my boss, so I didn't have to hack. And he said, I only sent them to those two because one is about to go down for fraud, so you don't need to be mixed up in that. And then the second one is just an awful person to work for. He's apparently probably handsy. And he's like, I promise, that's all I did, nothing else. And then he tells her, so now sit on my face. And that's what she did, and held onto the bookcase while he ate her pussy until she came. And then he says, it's time to make some of your other fantasies. Let's live out your other fantasies. I say, well, go ahead. So then we switch back to Preston. And he knows that sex with Tara is becoming more incessant, and he feels like they're trying to make up for the past 2 years. Like, if he could go back and change how everything went down, he would. Um, she's like, I gotta go prepare for my interview. I need at least 2 hours. I gotta go. I gotta go. So she leaves from his place. He goes to his office. He still hasn't opened up the letter from his brother. Um, he did open up some documents for Violet, her passport. Girl's got like 4 full pages of stamps. So he didn't realize his brother traveled so much. And he heard something drop and he rushes out. It's Violet. She's crying. And she's like, I can't find my mommy and daddy. So he scoops her up, put her in bed, and he was like, I'm going to do my best, I promise. And she says this phrase at least once a day, that Uncle Preston lives inside the bear. And he said to her, what do you mean by that? And so she opened up the back of the bear, and inside was a little book, and it says, your family. And it had her parents, and it had his grandparents. Not his grandparents, they're her grandparents, his parents. And she knew their names, and she said they're in the clouds. And then she said the same thing about her parents. And then there are articles about, she said, this is you, Uncle Preston. You live in my bear. And he got misty eyed. And the baby's like, you're crying. And he's like, no, I'm not. She's like, yes, you are. Your eyes are watering. And he's like, I'm not crying. She says, it's okay. They're in the clouds now. And I just got teary eyed. I thought that was just so, oh, just so crushing. Like, she kind of understands, but she doesn't fully understand. And the fact that his brother, even though they weren't communicating, he still wanted his daughter to know that there is more family, like you do have someone else that's family in this world. And I just, oh my God, that was just so beautiful. And I think it made him think, of course, him being mad about stupid fucking shit, and none of it mattered. None of that stuff mattered, and he missed out on so much time with his brother. So that's a lot, but that was gut wrenching. Tara's mom is coming into town. Preston's going to take Violet to Disney World for her birthday. And so her mother is still on this tip about her quitting. And she takes her up to her place, and she does say to her, your father would have been so proud of you. We find out that the father was like a big quitter, and so the mom never wanted her to be like the dad. Which is why she always pushed her to be the complete opposite. Well, when they get inside her place, guess who's there? Our boy Preston. She's like, what are you doing here? I thought you were going to Disney World. And he says, well, someone wanted you to go. And so Violet said, Bear wanted you to go too. So, of course, the mom is looking like, wait, this is your boss? And she's like, yeah. And the mom's just staring at him. And she tells Preston, I'm going to show my mom the sights in New York and stuff. The mom said, oh, no, no, no. I'm down for Disney World. We can go to Disney World. Yeah, let's go. Yeah, I'm fine with that. You can show me this when we come back. She was ready to go. And so the mother had accepted that she was quitting, but I think after she saw him, she said to Preston, like, while they were on the plane, if you need me to beg her to take her job back, I will. Especially the way you look at her. So they spent the next 3 fun-filled days at Disney World. Preston's looking at her while they're sitting on the plane, and he knows that his feelings for her run much deeper than just sex. And so he wants to tell her that, when she quits, he wants to continue this, whatever this is. And his Tara's mom comes up and says, if you what did he say? If you really want her to stay, like, you should figure out a way to make her stay. And he says, no, she needs to go. She needs to be running her own company. And her mother smiled, and she said, you need to tell her how you feel. He, of course, played the, I don't know what you're talking about. And she said, I've seen how the two of you have not been able to keep your hands off each other. You very much like each other. Gotta be honest. So then he gets an email from George saying, "Did you really give her a recommendation to where I think you did?" Of course, he's like, "I gave her a recommendation, but apparently it was to somewhere different than what he thought." And he became enraged. We switch back to Tara, and she's at her going away party. She hasn't really talked to him the past week, and because he's been very distant, and he didn't show up to this party. Everyone was so sweet to her. They wrote a poem. It was just a really beautiful time. Everyone was gonna miss her. Cynthia came up to her and asked her, would she talk to Mr. Parker about possibly keeping her on as a permanent nanny? And she's like, "You should just tell him. And Cynthia's like, "Well, he values your opinion on everything. And she kind of went down the list of some things where he wanted Tara's opinion first before he made a decision. And so she goes to his office. She has a binder, and his new assistant's a male, and his actual name is Taylor. So everyone thought it was a joke when she introduced the guy, but it's real. But she still doesn't know the joke. So then he's being so cold to her when she brings in this binder, which is basically saying it's the stuff that he can do for himself. And he says, "You can just leave it." And she was just kind of like, "Okay, like, what's going on with you? And he found out that she was taking a job at the Marriott. And he's like, "You're working for the competition." He's like, "I can't believe you would do that," all this type of stuff. And she's like, "I'm working there as general counsel interim so I can get more experience from that. I can't just do it from as an assistant. Like, I need to see other roles." She's like, "I was going to talk to you about this, before, but he called her a traitor and everything else and called security to get her out. Like, it was awful." And so she was like, "I will never talk to him again." Preston and George are at the signing of the Von Strom's deal. They ask, "Where's Miss Lauren? And is she going to be joining us?" And Preston's like, "That traitorous woman would never join us again." And George is kind of like, "Miss Lauren, she's not available, but she wanted you all to know she was really happy that we were all able to come to an agreement." And then George whisked him off to the back of this little dive bar because it was like really budget friendly. And apparently that's what the Von Stroms prefer. And that was hilarious. I'm like, this man, when he stews, he really stews. So George is like, "You need to get it the hell together. Like, seriously." And he's like, "How can I? Like, clearly she went to my competition. You know, they hired her to get the inside track on me." And George is like, "She's there as general counsel. She took the job to get the experience. You know, their chief counsel, they're on extended leave. And she did that white ink thing that you did so that they can't ask her anything about any secrets involving this company." And he, of course, was like, "Oh, really?" You know, it shocked him, but he was still mad. So then the Von Stroms, they've signed it, and they were disappointed that he didn't take them to someplace expensive. They're like, "We like budget friendly, but we don't mind expensive dinners on someone else's dime." So he whips out the helicopter. And Preston's like, "We can go wherever you like." And the guy says, "You really do like wasting your money." He's like, "Listen, I have a niece, and she doesn't care anything about it. She'll play with a 50-cent cardboard thing all day." And the Von Strom guy was like, "Well, that does make me feel just a little bit better." The weekend, let me say, a week passes, and she notices that there wasn't much on the schedule for the CEO. And so she kind of called his assistant and was like, "Is this the correct calendar?" And she says, "Yeah, it's pretty simple." She's like, "To be honest, they hired you because you're a woman. He doesn't think women can do the job. That's why I have this job, and it's a cush job." The real counsel guy is someone named Bob. That's the guy he trusts with his life, but Bob's life is so hectic. It'll make your head spin. Um so the woman was like, just enjoy, have a spa day, just relax, enjoy yourself. And she's like, okay. Someone had sent a sweet seasons basket. She thanked the assistant for it, but the assistant was like, that wasn't me from me. That was from Preston Parker. We fast forward another couple of weeks. She's blocked Preston on all her stuff, deleted his number, even though she still knows his number by heart. He's still sending emails to her Marriott address, and she's not answering them. Um, he, of course, is sending in there, I know you're seeing my emails. Damn it, Tara. And so she goes to the tech department and asks them to block this email address. And she gets this. The guy's kind of like, well, we'll see what we can do. But, things fall through the cracks. So she immediately knows Preston's behind this shit, right? So the guy tells her that Preston offered him $2,000 a week not to block to his email. And apparently he's supposed to call Preston if she ever asks for it to be blocked. Whole mess. She's threatened to have the guy fired for fraternizing with competition. And the guy's like, the Marriott is nowhere near Parker Hotels. Like, Parker Hotels is in another league of its own. And she's just like, that damn Preston. So we switch back to Preston. He, of course, is miserable. His assistant, of course, does not compare to Tara. So in his eyes, they're nowhere near as good. But the assistant's like, says to him, give me an opportunity and judge me based on what I do, not based upon what Tara did, because Tara is someone I will never measure up to. I can't live up to that expectation. Give me a fair shot. And he should. So Tara gets an email from the CEO saying that they want some ideas for this autumn theme rollout that's going on. There's going to be a conference. And so she's been working on ideas. So she goes to his office and she's telling him, she's got some ideas. And he's like, oh, you weren't supposed to get that. And she's like, huh? So then he starts telling her about these rolls. And he's like, they're gluten free. So she ate them and ate a few more. There's garlic in them. She's allergic. And the guy starts telling her before she has this bad reaction, he starts saying to her how women, folk, basically don't have really great ideas. They should leave it to men. So he's just a total, misogynistic jerk. And she starts sneezing. And when she asked him if garlic was in there, he's like, yeah, but you can't taste it until you pair it with the wines. So she winds up leaving. And the guy he wouldn't even call a car. Like, he tells her he's going to suspend the car service. That's what he meant to email her about. And that she'll have to get a cab. But he's like, I'm not going to call for you. And I'm just like, the girl having an allergic reaction and you won't even call a cab? Oh my gosh. So anyway, she's home and Ava's taking care of her. She's got swollen lips, swollen eyes. Poor thing. We find out Preston's been coming, checking on her through Ava. And he's been giving Ava gifts to try and get intel on her. And Tara sees this Cartier watch and knows her friends has been spilling some type of tea about her. And so she wants to know if she would ever take him back. And she's like, after the way he talked to me, like, why would I ever? And Ava's kind of like, yeah, you shouldn't take back your billionaire boyfriend that gives you great cock and value your opinions and like all these things she started listing, and she was being facetious about it. And Tara didn't like that because that's her friend, she wants her on her side. But again, it's something that could have been talked about. Now he did talk to her wrong, and that was fucked up. It was, but it is also something that y'all can have a conversation about. Now, should he have been willing to have the conversation then? Absolutely. But he wasn't. But now he is trying to go over and beyond to try and fix it, And you're seeing that where you are, the shit ain't all it cracked up to be any goddamn way. So Preston's at home with Violet, and she has this sports cup. And Violet says, I miss Tara. And he's like, me too. So he calls Ava and he's like, I'm tired of this shit. Like, I need to talk to her. Like, where is she? And not Tara, A was like, "You're not even gonna offer me a gift." And he says, "Well, her not talking about me at night will be your gift." And cause he knows she does, cause it's not that she doesn't love him, but she's upset and she's hurt, you know. And so she tells him where she is, but she also warns him, if you ever hurt my friend again, like, I'm gonna get you. Like, I had my friends in fashion. We're gonna put 1-star reviews on your hotel. We're gonna mess you up, basically, you know. And so she also tells him, and you won't have any more chocolate drops at the bottom of your coffee. It'll be something else. You catch my drift? He's like, is that a threat? She's like, it's a promise. And so he hangs up. So Tara's at an event. It's so basic. The food is overcooked. She is just like, this is just a hot mess, you know? And so then Mark, the CEO, comes up, brings the guy over who planned it, and was like, oh, he does all my work, and he, you know, can learn a lot from him and all this type of crap. So he walks off, and she had already started drafting her 2 week notice because she couldn't take this anymore. Especially after the conversation with that guy, she decided she was going to backdate her 2 week notice because the guy was like, you know, I hear you're very ambitious, pretty much trying to insinuate she'll do anything for a promotion. And she's like, you've lost your mind. She's like, I won't even be working here by Monday. So that was it. She's done with this place. Well, then, of course, she feels some familiar arms come around her and that voice. And they have it out, and he apologizes to her. He told her he was sorry. He understood why she took the job. It was, you know, she was trying to get more experience in a different role. And so when she does take over a company, she'll know how to do it better. And he's like, I'm sorry. He's like, I understand now. He told her he had a new deal for her, and she, of course, was like, I'm not working for you. So they start kissing. Everyone's staring, but they didn't care. They left. We fast forward to the following year, and we find out they're engaged. She runs the Von Strom's hotel. So she's the CEO of Von Strom's. And I think that's great. And we find out that the Westin, well, the W hotels, all of that, of course, is going to be left to Violet. So now she's going to have her dad's, Parker Hotels, uh, Von Strom's. But I'm sure they're probably going to have children. They're not pregnant, but I'm sure they probably will. But if they don't, everything will go to her. They're at Disney World with Violet and her new friends. She still has tough times throughout, you know, different nights. Sometimes she'll ask for her parents and they just hold her. So they're just all living a really good life. I loved it. I thought this was really cute. Um you know someone's handing in a notice when you see the title 2 week notice. You know that's happening. But the things that happen around it, like the brother dying and him getting custody of the kid, I didn't see that coming. And that was like a shock, and that was emotional. I was like, "Oh my gosh." But I did like it. I thought it was a really good book. It's a really good read. It really is. Great writing by Whitney G. Let me know what you all think down in the comments section. If you have any ideas as well for any new series or standalones, put those down there as well. If you are in the market for a beautiful notebook or journal, I do have those available, and the link is going to be available down below in the description section. Make sure you like and subscribe and share. And as always, I truly do thank you all for your support, and thank you for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club.